Welcome back. Tonight we are going to talk about the iodine loading test and its importance in being able to tell if you are absorbing your iodine and how much and why this could be a useful tool for your health care. Um, more than three people. Dr. Bright, who is a physician that I follow from Italy. She's a U.S. Doctor, but she has been in Italy for many, many years, and she practices in Italy. Very skilled, knowledgeable, probably one of the people that I would trust the most regarding thyroid. And then Dr. David Brownstein, as well as a couple of others on thyroid and iodine, because I've been researching this for a number of months. Dr. Berry also talks about iodine, but not really to the extent that like Dr. Bright and Dr. Brownstein do for that level of expertise, in my opinion. And so there is only one lab in the country, I mean the United States, that I know of that does the 24-hour iodine loading test. And that is Hakala Labs. And I'll link that in the description of the video. In Dr. Brownstein's book on iodine, he did list two other companies, but I don't have the newest version. And when I went to look up the two other companies, they were no longer there. And Dr. Bright had said that Hakala Labs was the only one that did the loading test. So very often, if you go to your doctors and they do a urine test or whatever, they'll often test for iodine. If you are not supplementing with iodine already, that can be an okay test to let you know if you are deficient. But it really, from what I understand, is it's not testing like iodine. It's actually looking at like a combination, because there is radioactive iodine in some things, and there's not really a control value when you do like those spot checks, because you don't really know how much iodine that you've taken in, and so when you do that, there's not a control value really. And so I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it's something that's often overlooked, and the spot check test that they just do like at your doctor's lab is actually, it's pretty inaccurate. If you want to get like if you're having symptoms of iodine deficiency, and iodine is extremely tight with thyroid function. So they kind of go hand in hand, as well as a lot of, other hormonal things. Every cell in your body needs iodine, not just your thyroid. So it's a pretty important element, and but especially if you're having signs or symptoms of lacking in iodine, and because especially if you don't live near the ocean, iodine is not really prevalent in our food, and even if you're using the crappy iodized table salt, which I implore you to never use, the iodine that is supposedly in there is very minimal, and by the time you get it from the store to your table and then you open it up, there's virtually no iodine left in there, because it actually kind of aerosols, and so it it evaporates out into the air, and then it's not left in your salt, and you're using refined salt and hurting your health, and you're not getting the iodine anyway. So anyway, I have been supplementing with iodine for a number of months now. Well, probably since October, maybe. Well, no, I guess this summer. But I was doing a very small amount of Lugol's 2% solution. And after learning about iodine, and then learning that I was having thyroid issues, and that my thyroid medication would work better if I had the iodine supplementation, I started increasing my iodine dose, and I noticed a lot of my symptoms, like my dry skin and things, went away. And actually, because iodine is antiviral, it's very good. I was getting a cold sore because I had gotten really stressed out with some stuff, and I haven't gotten a cold sore in years. So I didn't have any like that cold sore medicine, but it hurt. And so I just dripped a couple of drops of iodine right on the cold sore and kind of rolled it around with a Q-tip, and it burned, but so does the medication from the store for the cold sore. But it stopped it right in its tracks. And like the next morning, I did another dose, but it was virtually gone. And so that was amazing. I also learned how ways to, like if I'm getting a cold, that I can actually, there's a method that you can use to inhale iodine, and so it's antiviral, which helps up in the nasal passage. But anyway, iodine's going to be for another video when I go over a couple iodine books. But I just wanted to go over this test. So if you go to Hakala Labs, again, I'll have the link down below, you can order the 24-hour loading test. And the reason that this is important is because you are starting at a specific time, you are having a set amount of iodine, and you are collecting every drop of urine within 24 hours. And all of our cells take in the iodine. Now, if money was no object, the best way to do this would be to do the loading test before you start supplementing with iodine, and then about 90 days after you start supplementing with iodine, and then about 90 days after that. The iodine loading test is $70 each time. Well, if you keep your container and stuff, you get $5 off, the next times that you do it. So it's not cheap. So because I had already been supplementing with iodine, obviously I didn't do the test prior to that. But because I've been supplementing with iodine for longer than 6 months, I figured my cells should be as saturated as they're going to get. Because what happens is, so the reason that you want to do it, if you can, and money is not an object, before you start supplementing, is because it gives you a baseline. Then 90 days after you start supplementing, sometimes you'll actually see that amount of the saturation might actually go down. And the reason is because think about your cells like a sponge. And if you've ever had a sponge that's really dry, it takes more water to get it really saturated. And then once it's wet, you can saturate it easily without a lot of water. So if your cells are really depleted of iodine, and maybe they're getting the wrong iodine from wherever, or you're not absorbing that because it's not in the concentration or however your cells are needing it, you're going to urinate out more of that. Then when you start supplementing with the right iodine, your cells are going to be like, oh, give that to me, and they're going to hoard it, which is what needs to be done, and less is going to go out into your urine. So the way the loading test works is for you to be at full saturation, you should be urinating out 90% or more of the iodine that you had taken in the loading test. And anything less than that means that your cells still aren't at full saturation, and so they're still either fighting toxic things like fluoride or chlorine or bromine, which those things are in everything, so it's not uncommon. And so many people don't even, get to the 90% saturation, and that's okay. But it just kind of helps you with getting your dosage in line. And if you have an iodine literate physician, that is wonderful. Hang on to them. Most physicians, even functional medicine practitioners, are not iodine literate. They know it's important, but they really don't know how to read the iodine tests and things like that. And an example is our functional medicine practitioner, whom I love dearly. She did an iodine spot test. I didn't know that she was going to be doing that with my oldest daughter. And she was only supplementing a very small amount of iodine, but her urine showed what the physician felt was a lot. And she was like, oh, you need to stop, the iodine. And I said, no, she doesn't need to stop the iodine, because it's what's showing on that urine test isn't accurate. You don't have a baseline. And she literally just started anyway. So I knew her cells were still, trying to get saturated. So anyway, that was kind of a long story that should have been short. Most doctors really don't know a lot about iodine. And iodine can be extremely safe if you use the right one. So what happens is you order the test from Hakala Labs, and you can do just the 24-hour loading test. You can also add on a fluoride test and a bromide test, and that will show you your levels in comparison to your iodine, because bromide and fluoride, and chlorine, they fight for uptake because they're halides in the same family as iodine, and they're a little bit more beefier and power. They'll just knock iodine right out. They're like the bullies of the halide family. So to add each one of those on is $35. So you can see how this does add up. So at this point, due to funds, I just did the 24-hour loading test. Hakala Labs sent everything that was needed. So they sent a 16-ounce urine collection cup. They sent a jug to collect the urine, where you would pour from the collection cup for the 24 hours. They sent a 50 milligram iodine tablet. They sent the instructions. They sent the vials to put the sample in, and then you flush the rest after the 24 hours. And they also sent a return, a box that was already pre-labeled, postage paid, everything. All you had to do was write on the vial your name, birthday, email, all that stuff, fill out the paper, stick it in there, tape the box up, and drop it at the post office. That's all you had to do. And then you can choose to get your results via email or via email. And I opted for email because it's quicker. So the owner of Hakala Labs is Dr. Abrams. And Dr. Brownstein actually studied under Dr. Abrams. And Dr. Abrams is the foremost authority on iodine. So very knowledgeable. I have seen some interviews with him, and he really, really knows his stuff. So anyway, I have been supplementing with, I take Lugol's, I take J. Crow's Lugol's 5% solution. And I get this straight from J. Crow's website, because on Amazon you can only get the 2% solution. So I can take less drops of this than if I did the 2%. I do have the 2% because my kids use iodine as well, because it's very important for brain health, for well, it's super important. And again, I'm going to go over that in another video, but I have them taking the 2% because they don't need as much. I have some stuff going on where I need more. So and then my husband, because he doesn't have time to mess with drops in the morning, I give him Ioderol, which is in the what I have him taking right now is the 12.5 milligram tablet. And he could take 2 or more to get where we need to do. Sometime this summer, I'm going to have him do the loading test and see where he's at. Now, because we're already supplementing with iodine, what you have to do before you do the loading test is you have to stop taking all iodine for 72 hours. So if you're taking a mineral supplement, like I take a chelated mineral supplement that has a little bit of iodine in it. It's not a Lugol's, which Lugol's is iodine and iodide. So there's iodide and iodine, and they're molecule different, but the body actually needs both of them. And so the Lugol's solution, which is also the Ioderol, but in a tablet form, is the iodine and iodide, because certain cells need one and certain cells need the other. But if you like buy those seaweed snacks, or you're using like any sort of mineral, so like Keto Chow makes a mineral drop that would have a little bit of iodine in it. You have to stop taking all of that for 72 hours before you do the testing. So I had stopped taking all my iodine. I didn't take my minerals or any of that for 3 days before I took my before I did the test. Then you empty your bladder. You can do this right away in the morning. You can do it in the afternoon. The directions say to do it right away in the morning, but one of the tips that I read actually on the website was to do it in the afternoon if you have a habit of getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, because if you go more than a certain amount, you actually have to send back 2 vials, and it's in the instructions. But that way you're not dinking around with that in the middle of the night. So I stopped all of that for 72 hours. Then you take the 50 milligram iodine tablet and then collect all the urine for 24 hours. So I did that. And just as an example, for the 5% solution, 1 drop of the 5% solution, according to the Iodine Crisis, which is written by Lynn Farrell, and the foreword is actually done by Dr. Brownstein, and I'll be doing a book review on this because it's phenomenal. Hi, I hope you're enjoying this video. If you are, please be sure to like and share. Also, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel and that you hit that notification bell. So 1 drop of the Lugol's 5% is 6.25 milligrams, and 1 drop of the 2%, which is what my kids take, is 2.5 milligrams, and they take, well, the older girls take 2 drops a day, so they're getting 5 milligrams of the Lugol's, and my youngest, I just give like 1 drop. She's 11. I just give like 1 drop a couple times a week, but it's very needed for female hormones, well, male as well, but brain development and everything. Iodine's just, it's one of those things that, yes, it's one of those areas that needs to be supplemented because you're not going to get it in your food. Most things you can just get from your food, including like vitamin C and stuff like that, unless you're sick. But vitamin D is often one that needs to be supplemented. Iodine is one that needs to be supplemented in certain minerals. So with the Lugol's, I take 7 drops of the 5%, and I found that was my sweet spot where I noticed a lot of my symptoms were going away. My cheeks on my face used to be like so rough no matter how much I moisturized. I mean, they were just like red, and they felt like scaly. They felt like an old man's feet. I don't know how else to describe them. And so I just slowly started increasing the drops, and I take it in my morning coffee. You can also put the drops in a empty gel cap and take it that way. That's totally fine, and I've done that before. So that's something, but you don't want to make them up and put them in because, again, they're aerosol and they're liquid, and so you don't want to do that. So, but if you want to do that in the morning because you don't want to deal with drinking it, fine. So that's roughly right around 40 milligrams of iodine. And I do take a lot of salt because salt is important for absorbing iodine as well. So I've been taking for at least the last month the 7 drops. And so I figured, that's got to be a good amount. My cells should be saturated. So I was expecting like a really good report back from the lab. Now, keep in mind, our water is fluoridated. I think that's how you say it. Whatever. It's got fluoride in it. The cities around us don't have fluoride in it, but ours does. So while we do use a water filter, we're still bathing in it, and it does get into your skin. We don't use fluoride toothpaste. We don't do fluoride at the dentist or anything like that. But it still is everywhere. And bromide is in a lot of things, including some medication. And I enjoy sitting in the hot tub, and it's not often that happens, but they use bromine which is bromide in hot tubs. So I know that I've got that. I'm always going to have that level of toxicity of those halides competing for the iodine until I'm rich, which will be never, and I can afford a whole house water filtration system. But then there still is when you go to the hotels and, travel and all of that. So some things you're just never going to get away from, and you just have to do the best that you can. So anyway, I figured that I should have a really good saturation level of iodine because I'm taking almost 40 milligrams of iodine. And like the biggest tablet that you can buy is 50 milligrams. And that's a pretty big load. So I got my lab test back, and as you can see here, the 24-hour secretion of the 50 milligrams that I took was 33.25 milligrams. So if my cells were really saturated, it would have been almost that whole 50 milligrams. And then what that would have told me is that I could have experimented backing down, because once everything is saturated, just like a sponge, once you have it all full of water, then it takes less to keep it wet. So my percentage was only 67% when really you want it to be over 90%. So while it's not that bad, it's not as good as I was figuring. I'm not going to increase my iodine dose. I don't feel that that's warranted. I'm happy with the results that I'm seeing from the amount that I'm taking, and I'll just try to watch the halides that, like the fluoride and things like that, and we're saving up for a different water filtration system, at least for drinking. And so, we're going to do the best that we can, but I feel like 67% is not too terrible. And I think eventually, like continuing with this, I plan to retest again next winter. And at that point, I will also do the fluoride and the bromide. But I think by then that saturation level will be up. My husband, at his last appointment, when I switched him over to my functional medicine practitioner, she did run an iodine test, and he hadn't been supplementing at the time, and it was just part of the urine test. And so she did tell him that his iodine was low. And again, those spot tests are okay if you're not already supplementing. And so it was pretty funny because it was about, I don't know, a week and a half after he had gone and had his labs drawn. And then the morning of his appointment, I actually started him on the iodoral. And so, she told him that his iodine was low, and he was like, "Oh, that's okay. Sherry's got me started on iodine." She's like, "Yep, I figured she'd be on it." But his iodine was low, so he really did need a supplement. Whether the 12.5 milligrams is enough, I'm not sure. But we're going to just start with that. And then, eventually I may double that. But I want to do the loading test first for him. So I've been very happy. I was very happy with my experience with Hakala Labs. I'm happy with our iodine supplementation. I plan to hold on to my jug so that I get the $5 off, and next time we'll do the bromide and the fluoride testing. But I think it was a really good validation that I'm on the right track, and that I'm not overdoing the iodine. Because if it would have been like 90%, I would have been like, hey, that's great. I can go down to 4 drops, and then just kind of monitor how I feel. But because it's there, I'm going to keep my iodine supplementation there. So I'll link the J. Crow's website in the description, as well as where I got the iodoral. It's not cheap, but it's definitely worth it, especially for the health and for how much we need iodine. And I really recommend the loading test because it will give you that good baseline. And again, I mean, if money's no object, do it before you start, and then like 90 days, and then like 90 days. But for me, money is object. Is money doesn't grow on trees here, and so I just did that one. But it's still. I mean, if my husband's iodine was low, I know mine was low prior. And then I will get those iodine book reviews done soon. So if you're curious on where your iodine level is, definitely do the loading test. It's phenomenal, and the company is really great to work with. The iodine that I recommend supplementing with is the Lugol's, because it's what it has the right ratio of the iodine and the iodine. as opposed to like Nascent or a couple of the other different types. It's not what the body needs. So, and if you have thyroid issues or you suspect that you have thyroid issues, then you definitely need to look into iodine. So with that, I am going to end this video. I hope that you found it helpful, and we'll talk again soon.